It is not your fault. It is not your fault. It wasn't your fault why they didn't want to hug you in front of their friends. It wasn't your fault when they didn't want to understand you. It wasn't your fault when they were ashamed of you. It wasn't your fault when they didn't return the I love you
in front of their friends.
It wasn't your fault when they did return it but didn't act like it. It wasn't your fault when you were laying next to them crying. It wasn't your fault when they ignored you. It was not your fault when you believed every word they say.
It wasn't your fault when they did return it.
It wasn't your fault when you decided to stay.
It wasn't your fault when you were
It wasn't your fault when they chose somebody else over and over and over again.
You believed every word they said.
It wasn't your fault when you decided to try to understand them. It wasn't your fault when they didn't wait for you like you waited for them.
And over again.
It wasn't your fault when you loved them. It wasn't your
understand
fault
them.
when they screamed at you. It wasn't your fault when they didn't
wait for
try.
you
It
like
was
you
never
waited
your
for them.
fault, and it will never,
wasn't your fault
ever
when you loved
be your
them.
fault because you gave
It
yourself.
wasn't your fault when they screamed at
You
you.
tried.
It wasn't
You
your fault
loved.
when they didn't
You
try. It was
gave.
never your fault.
You
And
made.
it will never,
You wanted
ever
to,
be
but
your
they
fault.
didn't.
Because you gave yourself.
It wasn't your fault
tried,
even though they never
you
said
loved,
it. It wasn't your
gave,
fault when you kissed
You
them
made, you
even though they
wanted to,
wronged
but
you.
they didn't.
It wasn't your fault when you
It
were
wasn't your
consoling
fault
them
even though
after
they
they
never
cheated
said
on
it.
you. It wasn't your fault
It
that
wasn't
they
your
wanted
fault
to
when you
protect
kissed
you
them
from their
even though they
lies.
wronged you.
It wasn't
It
your
wasn't your
fault
fault
when
you
they
were
decided
consoling
they were
them
better
after
for them.
they cheated on you.
It was never
It
your
wasn't your
fault.
fault that they wanted to protect
It
you
will
from the
never
lies.
be your
It
fault.
wasn't your fault when they
But never
decided
blame it on
they were
them,
better for them.
because then you will rot,
It was
just
never
like
your
they
fault.
did. Never blame it on
never be
them
your
because the
fault.
cheater becomes the cheater, because the lie becomes the
never
liar,
blame it on
because the
them.
wrong becomes the wronged.
Because then you will rot.
Because the abused
Just like
becomes
they
the
did.
abuser only
Never
if you let
blame it
them,
on
and
them
you
because
already
the cheated
did.
becomes the
So
cheater,
don't let
because the
them
lied
lead
to
you
becomes
to
the
their
liar,
black
because the
hole,
wrong becomes
filled
the
with
wrong, or
hate,
because the abused
filled
becomes
with
the
regret,
abuser.
filled
Only
with
if you
fear.
let them.
Be better
You
than
already
to
did.
blame it on anyone.
So don't let them
Be
lead
better
you
than
to
to
their
let
black
it
hole,
change you like
filled
it
with
changed
hate,
them.
filled with regret.
They
filled
acted
with
like
fear.
that because they didn't
Be
know better.
than to blame
They
it on
were
anyone.
and are like
Be
that
better
because they don't
than to
like
let it
themselves
change you
either.
like it changed
They
them.
are all
They
they
acted
need.
like that because they didn't know
You
better.
are all
They
you
were
need.
and are like that because
You
they
are the
don't
best thing
like
to
themselves
happen to
either.
yourself. You are
They
enough
are
to
all they
yourself.
need,
You are enough
and
for
you
the
are all
world.
you need.
And that's why it
You
will
are the
never
best thing to
be
happen to
your
yourself.
fault.
You are enough to yourself. You are enough for the world.
Because for the
And
first
that's why
time
it will
ever, you
never be your
finally
fault.
understand that they
Because
needed
for the first time
themselves
ever, you
more than
finally
you needed
understand that
them.
they needed
Because for the
themselves
first
more than
time
you
ever,
needed
you
them.
finally understand that you
Because
must
for the
first
first time ever, you
want to
finally
spend the
understand that
rest
you
of
must
your
first
life with
want to spend the
yourself.
rest of your life
And they
with
weren't
yourself.
ready,
And they weren't
nor
ready,
were you.
nor were you.
Therefore, it is
Therefore,
not your
It is not
fault.
your fault.